Desha County, Arkansas, January 3, 1954. The wind cut across the empty fields like a blade that afternoon, carrying the cold into every crack of the old Hensley farm. Inside the leaning barn, Willard Hensley, a farmer nearly forgotten by the land he worked, stared at a problem no one cared enough to solve. Piles of corn straw so useless they had become part of the landscape. Failed harvest after failed harvest had left that straw behind like a cruel reminder of everything he couldn't grow. Bills were stacked, hopes were thin, and Willard, a man worn down by years of trying, felt the weight of a future that seemed already decided. But then, almost by accident, he made a movement no one would have thought twice about. A small squeeze of his hands around a handful of straw, a gesture so simple it barely deserved to be noticed. Yet something happened in that moment, something quiet, something strange, something that would change the direction of his life in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. This is the story of a tired, underestimated farmer who lived between debts, cold nights, and the silent expectations of a family who still believed in him even when he no longer did. What Willard discovered that day wasn't luck, wasn't magic, and wasn't a miracle. It was the first step of a transformation no one predicted. Not the neighbors, not the land, not even Willard himself. A story made not of grand victories, but of silent failures, small hidden wins, and doors that open slowly, quietly, only for those stubborn enough to keep knocking. Without giving away what comes next, I can only say this. Willard Hensley thought he was just compressing a useless bundle of straw. In truth, he was compressing the entire direction of his family's future and shaping a destiny the world never expected from a man like him. But before we continue with the video, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The morning started the way it always did on the Hensley farm, with a silence that didn't comfort anyone. It was the kind of silence that carried the weight of unpaid bills, thinning crops, and nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering how much deeper life could sink before it broke you for good. The cold air seeped through the cracks in the bedroom walls, brushing against Willard Hensley's face as he sat up on the worn mattress. He didn't need an alarm. Worry had been waking him long before dawn for months. Mary was awake too, though pretending otherwise. She always sensed when he rose early. The bed dipped, the house shifted, the darkness itself seemed to tilt around him. "You didn't sleep again," she murmured, not really asking. "No reason to," he said, rubbing his hands together. They were cracked hands, weather-shaped and scarred. Hands that told the story of a man who had spent his life working land that refused to repay him. Mary wrapped the faded quilt around her shoulders and sighed softly. "Have something warm before you go out." There was love in the offer, but the truth hung over it. Warm meant weak coffee, and hope stretched thin. Willard only nodded. Promises were heavier than he could carry these days. Outside, the sky was a pale, washed-out gray, like everything had been drained of its color, just as the Hensley farm had been drained of its strength. The barns leaned tiredly, the fences sagged, even the fields looked exhausted, as if the soil itself had given up. But what Willard always noticed first was the mountain of corn straw behind the barn. It sat there like a monument to failure. Piles and piles of thin, brittle stalks, left over from a crop so weak it barely covered the cost of planting. Straw was the last thing a field gave you, the leftover no one cared about, the reminder that something never grew the way it should have. And here, there was plenty of it, too much. He kicked at a loose piece with his boot, listening to the dry crackle. "Good for nothing but burning," he muttered. Even burning it felt wasteful. Waste was a luxury he didn't have. He walked past the old tractor, the one that broke down whenever it felt like asserting dominance, and past the patchy garden Mary tended with stubborn hope. The air smelled faintly of cold dirt and leftover smoke from yesterday's fire pit. Inside the barn, a narrow beam of sunlight pushed through a missing plank, illuminating the dust that hovered in the empty space. Willard's steps led him to the workbench where an old, cracked book lay open. It had belonged to his father, a collection of farming oddities, forgotten techniques, and useless tricks from generations ago. His father had sworn the book held secrets worth gold. Willard had spent most of his adult life learning that the land rarely cared about a man's secrets. But that morning, his eyes caught something on the page he hadn't noticed in years. A hand-drawn sketch showing how early farmers tried to make use of leftover straw, rope, bedding, stuffing, and one crude drawing of a compacted straw block meant to hold heat inside winter cabins. He stared at it, not because it impressed him, but because it looked ridiculous, too simple, too impractical, too desperate. Things nobody uses anymore, he whispered. But he didn't close the book. His father had written a small note in the margin long ago. Sometimes what's left over is the only thing worth saving. Willard shut the book a bit too forcefully, the echo bouncing off the barn walls. Not today, he muttered. Not this. Back in the kitchen, Mary sat at the table, counting coins slowly, as if reverence could multiply them. The small tower of quarters and dimes seemed to tremble under her careful fingers. How bad? He asked. Her eyes lifted, soft, tired, bad. The words settled between them like a weight that had no right to be as heavy as it was. She slid the coins toward him. It's not enough. Willard stared at the table. Generations had eaten here. His father, his grandfather, men who had faced the same soil, the same storms, but somehow had managed to keep the land alive. He felt like he was failing not just his family, but his bloodline. Mary reached for his hand, squeezing gently. We'll get through. He nearly told her he didn't believe that anymore, but some truths are too heavy to speak aloud. She poured him a cup of coffee, the weak kind they'd been drinking for months. He took a sip. It tasted like necessity, not comfort. Don't disappear into yourself today, she said. I won't, he replied, but both of them knew he already was. By noon, he was outside again, gathering straw to burn. The pile behind the barn had grown too large. Something had to be done with it. He dumped a bundle into the fire pit and lit a match. The flames leapt up hungrily, turning gold and orange as they swallowed the dry stalks. But just as he turned away, something odd caught his eye. The fire slowed, not stopped, just slowed. The flames licked the edges but hesitated at the center, burning through the straw unevenly. Willard frowned, leaning closer. That wasn't normal. Straw like this should burn up fast, in one quick whoosh. But this? It held its shape longer. It resisted the flame. It burned thicker. He prodded the pile with a stick, confused. The fire responded strangely, almost reluctantly. What in the world? He murmured. He picked up a handful of loose straw and squeezed it. It was feather light, just as worthless as it looked. But when he scooped up a thicker handful, mixed with small fibers, broken pieces and dust, it pressed together differently, denser, almost like it wanted to stay that way. He stood still for a moment, staring at the rising smoke, feeling something small and unwelcome pressing against his thoughts. A tiny spark of curiosity, a stupid spark, a spark he didn't trust. He shook it off. No, not today. The mail truck rumbled down the gravel road that afternoon. Willard's chest tightened before the wheels even stopped. Mail these days meant reminders of everything slipping out of reach. The mailman handed him a thick envelope, one of those official-looking ones nobody wants. Willard didn't open it. He didn't need to. He already knew it was another overdue notice. He slid it into his back pocket and stared out across the field, letting the cold wind hit his face. The corn stalks swayed weakly, thin and lifeless. When he walked inside, Mary was waiting, hands clasped together. "Bad news?" she asked. "Just news," he replied. She didn't press. She stepped closer and rested her hand over his chest, right above his heartbeat. "We've survived worse," he almost said. Not lately, but words like that could break something between them, so he swallowed them whole. After supper, beans and bread, nothing more, he returned to the barn to put away his tools. But instead of stopping at the workbench, he drifted toward the straw as if pulled by something unseen. He knelt, grabbed a handful and squeezed. It crackled in his palm. He grabbed more, mixing different textures, pressing harder. Then, almost without meaning to, he began twisting and rolling it, trying to get the fibers to bind together. It fell apart instantly. He tried again. This time it held for a second longer. It wasn't much, but it was something. He rolled more straw, compacting it with his thumb, shaping it between his palms until he formed a crude, ugly little bundle. It looked ridiculous, like a toy, like a mistake, like proof that he was a man running out of sensible ideas. He placed it on the table and sighed. Stupid, but he didn't throw it away. He stood there, listening to the wind slip through the barn walls, watching shadows flicker across that tiny bundle. His heart beat faster, not with confidence, but with fear. Hope is always frightening. It's a dangerous thing to feel when you've been disappointed too many times. Still staring at the bundle, he whispered, "What if?" Two words that change everything. Willard turned it over in his hands. What if this could keep heat in? He remembered the way the straw burned thick, slow, stubborn. He remembered Mary's cold hands cupped around a thin coffee mug each winter. He remembered the sketch in the old farming book, ugly, simple, forgotten. He set the bundle on the shelf gently, almost with respect. "This is stupid," he whispered. "So stupid it just might." He didn't finish the sentence. Some endings don't belong at the beginning. He switched off the barn light and walked toward the house, leaving the small, shapeless bundle behind. quiet, insignificant, waiting to rewrite his entire future in the dark. Willard woke before the light reached the windows, long before the roosters called out across the fields. Sleep had become a stranger to him, visiting only briefly and never kindly. But this morning, something else stirred beneath his ribs, something he tried hard to ignore. A small, foolish pull toward the barn, toward that bundle of straw he had pressed together the night before. He stepped outside, boots sinking slightly into the damp ground. The grass was wet with dawn, the air sharp with the scent of cold soil. The farm looked the same as always, tired, worn, quietly pleading for a miracle it never received. Willard wasn't the kind of man who expected miracles, but he was the kind of man who couldn't leave a question unanswered, no matter how stupid the question seemed. Inside the barn, shadows clung to the walls. The small block of straw waited on the shelf like something half alive, half absurd. He picked it up. It felt firmer today, as though the fibers had tightened in the night. "Still stupid," he muttered, but he didn't put it down. He squeezed it again, turning it over. The shape was crude, but the texture felt different from loose straw, denser, slightly springy. He frowned, a reluctant spark of curiosity flaring in his chest. Mary found him there minutes later, leaning on the workbench like a man studying something far more important than a wad of dried stalks. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Looking," he answered. "At what?" He hesitated, then held up the block. "This." She stepped closer, took it from his hand, and weighed it gently as if trying to understand what he saw in it. "Feels warm," she said. "It was by the stove last night, but it's still warm." Her words lingered in the air, soft and dangerous. Hope often sounded like that, quiet enough to ignore but sharp enough to cut. Mary placed the block back in his palm. "If something keeps you curious," she said, "maybe don't walk away from it." He didn't answer. He wasn't ready to. But he took the block with him as he followed her back toward the house, thinking about the slow-burning straw from the day before, the strange density of the fibers, the old sketch in his father's book that he had pretended not to care about. After breakfast, Willard returned to the barn, pulled the old wooden vise from the corner, and dusted off years of neglect. The screw was stiff, the wood swollen with age, but it still worked. He placed a handful of straw inside, tightened the vise, and waited. The straw compressed, groaning softly under pressure. When he released it, a second small block tumbled into his hand, firmer than the first, cleaner in shape. He pressed it between his fingers. He grabbed a second bunch of straw, then a third, repeating the process. Each block came out slightly smoother, slightly more solid, not strong enough to build with, not useful enough to sell, but something about them held promise, the faintest whisper of worth. Still, the voice in his head kept returning. "This is dumb. This is nothing. You're wasting time you don't have." He shut his eyes and remembered the envelope in his pocket, the one he hadn't opened, the one that likely spelled out just how close they were to losing everything. The thought nearly crushed him, but when he opened his eyes, the straw blocks were still there, solid, warm, real. He lit the stove again, the barn filling with the scent of burning wood. He placed one block beside it and stepped back. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then he picked it up and froze. It was warm, not just warm, it was holding warmth. He wrapped his hands around it, watching as the heat lingered even after he moved it away from the stove. The block didn't cool immediately. It released heat slowly, steadily, almost stubbornly. His heart thumped, once, hard. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't excited, but he felt something shift inside him, something like a door opening in a dark room. He tried another block, same result, and another, the same. Straw wasn't supposed to do this. Loose straw never held heat this way, but compressed, pressed tight, forced together like bricks made from desperation, it behaved differently. He sat down heavily on a stool, staring at the 3 golden blocks lined on the bench like strange, fragile treasures. He imagined small barns using them to block drafts, chicken coops insulated for winter, storage sheds kept warmer through the Arkansas cold, or maybe just a poor family with cold hands, holding something that made life a little less harsh. His breath steadied. He didn't know what he was making yet, not clearly, not confidently, but it was something, and he hadn't had something in a long time. Mary appeared at the barn door again, wiping her hands on her apron. "You coming in for lunch?" "In a minute," he said softly. Her eyes fell on the blocks. "You made more." "Yeah. You thinking you're onto something?" He swallowed, unsure how to answer. "I'm thinking, I don't know what to think." Mary stepped inside, touched one of the blocks with her fingertips, then looked at her husband, really looked at him. Sometimes the stupid ideas are the ones no one else bothers to try. He let out a slow breath. "Maybe," she smiled gently. "Don't stop now, Willard." When she left, he turned back to the blocks, 3 ugly things made from trash, and for the first time in months, he felt a thin thread of direction pulling him forward. Not hope, not yet, but momentum. And on a dying farm in Desha County, momentum was the closest thing to a blessing a man like Willard could ask for. He picked up the first block again, closed his hand around it, and whispered into the quiet barn, "Maybe stupid ain't so stupid after all." For the first time in a long while, Willard walked into the barn the next morning with a sense of purpose. Not confidence, just purpose. Confidence was too expensive a thing for poor men to carry, but purpose he could afford. The sky outside was pale and wide, the kind of morning light that washed the world in quiet colors. The farm still looked worn, still looked thin, but something in the air felt different, or maybe the difference was inside him. Maybe it was that small, stubborn feeling that had refused to die overnight. He looked at the 3 straw blocks on the bench. They sat there like strange little keepsakes from a dream he hadn't meant to dream. He touched one, half expecting it to crumble the way his plans usually did. It didn't. His fingers lingered on the rough surface. It was still firm, still strange, still promising. He took a deep breath. "All right," he whispered, as if the straw were listening. "Let's see what you can really do." He grabbed an old wooden crate from the corner of the barn, a crate with gaps so wide wind could practically sing through them. Every winter, Mary complained about how cold the pantry got because the crate never kept anything warm. Maybe, Willard thought, maybe this is a place to start. He lined the inside of the crate with loose cloth, then set 1 straw block against the inner wall. The block didn't sit flush. It wasn't cut or shaped. It wasn't made for anything like this, but he pressed it in anyway, testing, imagining. He placed another block on the opposite side. Then he closed the crate lid and waited. It was ridiculous to wait for anything to happen. Straw didn't transform the world. Straw didn't fix broken farms. Straw certainly didn't pay debts. And yet he waited, leaning against the wall of the barn, his eyes tracking the thin morning sun as it climbed through the cracks in the boards. The silence stretched out so long it almost mocked him. After several minutes, he lifted the lid. Warm. The air inside the crate was noticeably warmer than the air around him. Not by much, but enough that he felt it. Enough that it startled him. He closed the lid again quickly, as if afraid the warmth might escape before he understood it. He tested again and again. He checked the crate every few minutes, pacing around it like a man guarding a secret. Each time, the warmth lasted longer. Not strong heat, just a small, gentle hold on the cold, a grip, a stubborn resistance. Willard swallowed hard. This meant something. Not something big, not something miraculous, but something real. He picked up one of the blocks and pressed it to his chest. "You were supposed to be worthless," he said softly. "Same as this damn farm. Same as me." The block warmed in his hands again, slowly, like it was answering him. He worked through the rest of the morning, compressing more straw in the vise, shaping block after block until his hands ached. Some blocks cracked, some crumbled, some fell apart entirely, leaving only dust and disappointment, but some held. And those few, it was enough to keep him moving. Around noon, he carried a set of blocks to the house. Mary was inside kneading dough with her sleeves rolled up, flour dusting her hair in a way that made her look softer than the world allowed her to be. "What do you have there?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. "Something I want to try," he said. She gave him that steady, patient look, the look of a woman who'd watched her husband chase too many dying ideas, but she nodded. "Go on." He opened the small cabinet by the window, the one that always felt cold to the touch in winter, and placed 3 straw blocks inside. Then he shut the door and waited. Mary crossed her arms. "You'll have to tell me what you're expecting." "Not expecting anything," he said. "Just hoping a little. Hoping is dangerous." "I know." Minutes passed. The kitchen smelled of flour and yeast. The old clock ticked. Mary watched him without speaking. Finally, he opened the cabinet again, and Mary gasped. She pressed her hand inside. "It's warm, Willard. It's actually warm." He didn't say anything, didn't trust his voice. Mary covered her mouth with her hand, looking from the cabinet to him. "Willard, what is this?" He shook his head slowly. "I don't know yet, but it's something." For a moment, neither of them moved. They just stood there, breathing the same air, feeling the same small miracle unfold in their kitchen. Then Mary touched his cheek, the way she used to when they were younger and life hadn't carved so many lines in their faces. "Don't stop," she whispered. "Whatever this is, don't let it go." Willard didn't respond. He just nodded, his throat tight. He returned to the barn after lunch and began working with a kind of quiet frenzy, pressing straw, shaping blocks, experimenting. He tried changing the pressure. He tried mixing old straw with fresh. He tested density, size, heat absorption. He worked for hours, sweat gathering on his brow despite the cold. At some point he whispered to himself, "If I can make it hold longer, if I can make it steadier." He didn't finish the sentence, didn't want to scare possibility away by naming it too early. As the sun began to fall behind the trees, he lined up 12 misshapen blocks on the bench, his first real batch. Imperfect, uneven, each one shaped by hope and rough hands. He touched them all one by one, as if counting something sacred. Then he whispered, "This is the first attempt, just the first." And for the first time in years, he felt the faintest pull toward tomorrow. Not fear, but anticipation. A stupid idea had found its first breath, and Willard Hensley wasn't ready to walk away from it anymore. By the end of that week, the barn no longer felt like a graveyard of broken tools and fading hopes. It felt alive. The air smelled of pressed straw and warm dust. The workbench was cluttered with blocks of different shapes and densities, each one a little better than the last. The vise creaked constantly, like an old friend complaining but still willing to help. Willard worked late every night. He paced, he tested, he broke things, he fixed things. And every time one of the straw blocks held its warmth longer than the one before, he felt something inside him straighten, something that had been bent for years. But ideas, even good ones, don't feed a family, and nothing would matter unless he could convince someone else that these clumsy blocks of straw were worth more than the garbage pile they came from. On Saturday morning, Mary stood at the doorway of the barn as he wiped sweat from his forehead. "Market day," she said softly. "You should go." He froze. "Go? With what?" She pointed to the blocks on the bench. "Take a few. See what happens." "Mary, people are gonna laugh." She stepped inside, brushing a loose bit of straw from his shoulder. "Let them. We've survived worse than laughter." He looked at her, really looked, and understood. She believed in him more than the land ever had, more than he believed in himself. It scared him, but it steadied him too. He wrapped 6 straw blocks in old cloth and placed them carefully in a wooden crate. It felt foolish, like carrying jars of sunshine or boxes of air. But he lifted the crate anyway and set it in the back of the truck. The road into town was long and rutted, lined with fields that whispered stories of struggle just like his own. The trees were mostly bare now, winter crawling closer each day. Willard drove with both hands clutching the wheel, the crate bouncing slightly in the back, every bump in the road echoing the doubt in his chest. Desha County's Saturday market was small, just a few tents, some tables of produce, local honey, used tools, and folks who knew each other too well to hide anything. When Willard parked, he felt dozens of eyes glance his way. He'd grown up around these people. He'd failed in front of them more times than he could count. They didn't need to say a word. He already knew what they thought. He set up a small table near the back, away from the busiest stalls. He placed the straw blocks on top of a folded burlap sack, the way a jeweler might lay out rare stones. Only these stones were golden, brittle, and made from things no one respected. The first hour passed quietly. People wandered by, glancing once, then looking away with polite confusion. A few nodded at him, the way you nod at someone you grew up with but no longer understand. Finally, a man stopped. A big fellow in a heavy jacket, hands rough from long hauls behind the wheel of a truck. He pointed at the blocks. "What are those?" he asked. Willard cleared his throat. "Insulation blocks," he said. The words felt strange in his mouth. "Made from compressed corn straw." The man blinked. "Straw? Like the stuff folks throw away?" "That's right." The man picked up a block, turning it over. "Kinda light. They hold heat," Willard said quietly. "Longer than loose straw. Longer than cloth. Longer than, well, longer than you'd think," the man snorted. "So it's a warm brick?" Willard forced a small smile. "Something like that." The man tested it again, pressing his thumb into the side. "Feels sturdy enough. What's it good for?" Willard swallowed. "Chicken coops, storage sheds, keeping tools from freezing, small spaces, drafty corners. Anything that needs to stay warm a little longer." The man grunted. "How much?" Willard hesitated. Too high and people would laugh. Too low and it would mean he didn't believe in his own work. 50 cents each, he said. The man chuckled. 50 cents for a block of trash? But he didn't set it down. He kept studying it, turning it in his big hands. Willard held his breath. "How many you got?" the man asked. 6 today. I'll take 2. Willard blinked, stunned. "You sure?" "Yeah." The man pulled out a handful of coins. "I'll try 'em in my tool shed. Gets colder in there than my truck cab." Willard wrapped the blocks carefully and handed them over. The man nodded once before walking away, leaving Willard standing there with the coins resting in his trembling palm. 50 cents each, $1 total. But to him, it felt like someone had just handed him a piece of sky. He didn't move for several moments, didn't trust himself to breathe. Mary's voice echoed in his mind. "We don't have the luxury of ignoring something." By noon, A few more people had stopped. Curious farmers, weekend tinkerers, a woman looking for anything that might keep her goat barn warmer. Some laughed, but some listened, and listening was enough. Willard sold 4 more blocks before the market closed. 6 blocks gone. 6 blocks that started as trash. He packed up slowly, his hands shaking with something he hadn't felt in years. Something like dignity, fragile but real. When he climbed into his truck, he didn't start the engine right away. He sat with the coins spread across his palm, the sunlight turning them into tiny gold promises. $1 wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't been chasing foolishness after all. When he pulled into the driveway at home, Mary came running from the porch. Her eyes found his before she saw the empty crate. "How'd it go?" she asked. Willard stepped out of the truck, opened his hand, and let the coins clink softly into her palm. She stared at them, breath catching, eyes filling, not because of the amount, but because of what it meant. She whispered, "You sold them." "Yeah," he said, "I sold them." And for the first time in years, Mary wrapped her arms around him, not out of fear, not out of comfort, but out of quiet, trembling pride. The first sale had been small, but it had split the darkness, and through that sliver of light, a new future, fragile, simple, made of straw, had begun. For the next few days, the farm felt strangely different, not richer, not safer, but lighter. The kind of lightness that comes from knowing the world hasn't shut its doors on you completely. Willard walked with a little more steadiness in his step. Mary hummed more while she cooked, and even the house seemed to breathe a little easier. But 6 blocks sold didn't fix a thing. $1 changed nothing, and Willard knew it. What mattered wasn't the money, it was the direction. A small, shaky direction, but a direction nonetheless. On Monday morning, Willard returned to the barn and began working on a fresh batch. He tested different straw lengths, mixed fibers, and tried to smooth out the rough edges. The vise groaned under the pressure as he tightened it over and over, pressing straw into compact golden blocks until his arms ached. Around midday, a truck rumbled down the long gravel drive. The sound made him freeze. Visitors were rare, and unannounced ones almost never good. Mary came out of the house, wiping her hands on her apron, watching as the truck pulled to a stop by the barn. The driver stepped out, the same tall, broad-shouldered man who had bought the first 2 blocks at the market. "Afternoon," he called. Willard wiped his hands on his jeans and walked over. "Everything all right?" The man smirked. "You tell me." He reached into the bed of his truck and lifted something wrapped in an old towel. When he unwrapped it, Willard blinked. 2 of his straw blocks rested there, still intact, but visibly used. The man held one up. "These things work." Willard's heart gave a startled jolt. "They do?" "Damn right they do," the man said. "My tool shed's usually freezing by sunrise this time of year, but those blocks kept it warmer than I ever seen. I stuck one between the tool crates, another near the back wall. Didn't think much of it. Figured I wasted $1. He chuckled. "Turns out it was the smartest dollar I spent all winter." Mary had stepped closer now, hands clasped. Her eyes were wide, bright with something caught between relief and wonder. The man scratched his beard. "Look, I ain't here to flatter you, but I want more." Willard blinked. "More?" "Yeah, 10 or 12 if you got 'em." Willard's breath caught. 10 or 12. He didn't have 10 or 12. He barely had 3 finished blocks ready. His mind raced. How long would it take him to make that many? Could he even keep them consistent? Did he dare commit? Mary answered before he could. "We can have them," she said. "Not a question, a decision." The man nodded. "Good. I'll give you $1 each. Maybe more if I like the next batch." $1 each? Willard echoed, stunned. "Hell, a warm shed's worth more than that," the man said. He climbed back into his truck. "I'll be back Friday to pick 'em up." The truck rumbled away, leaving the dust lifting softly behind the tires. Willard stood frozen, the cold wind biting his face. Mary turned to him slowly. $1 each, she whispered. "Willard, I know." His voice cracked a little. "I know." They walked back into the barn together. The unfinished blocks lay on the bench, small, rough, imperfect, but suddenly they were worth something. Worth more than straw, worth more than a gamble, worth enough to make a grown man feel the slightest tremor of belief in his chest. Mary picked up one block and held it with both hands, like a woman holding something fragile. "You think you can make 12 by Friday?" Willard stared at the vise, at the straw scattered across the floor, at the mountain of possibility he had never dared to climb. "I think I have to. For the next 4 days, The barn became a furnace of effort. Willard worked from dawn until long after the stars came out. The lamp on his workbench burned late into the night, its yellow glow seeping through the cracks in the barn walls like a quiet promise. He pressed straw until his hands stung. He adjusted the pressure, learned the rhythm, figured out exactly how tight the vise needed to be before the fibers surrendered and locked together. Mary brought him food when he forgot to eat. Sometimes she helped hold the straw steady. Sometimes she just sat nearby in silence, her presence steady as a heartbeat. By Thursday evening, 12 blocks sat on the bench. Smooth edges, solid bodies, firm structure. They looked like something real, something a man could trust. Willard touched each one in turn, not believing his own eyes. Mary stepped beside him. They look good. They look like straw, he said. Straw that works, she corrected softly. Friday morning came cold and fast. Frost clung to the barn door. Willard had barely slept, pacing half the night, heart filled with worry and hope fighting for space inside him. When the truck pulled up again, he felt his pulse thrum in his ears. The man stepped out, strode to the barn, and inspected the blocks one by one. He didn't speak at first, just turned each block over, testing its density, weighing it in his hand. After a long moment, he grunted, "These'll do." Willard almost buckled from relief. The man counted out $12, real money, crisp bills, not coins, and placed them in Willard's hand. "I might be back for more. Some other fellas saw these in my shed. They're curious." "Curious?" Willard repeated. "Yeah," the man said. "Curious is how things spread." As the truck pulled away, Mary wrapped her arms around Willard from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "You did it," she whispered. His throat tightened. "It's just $12. "No," she said softly. "It's proof." They stood there in the cold wind, holding on to each other and the smallest spark of possibility. The farm was still poor. The debts were still there. Life hadn't magically changed, but something had shifted. Demand had found them, and demand had a way of growing. Word travels fast in small places, faster than trucks, faster than rumors, faster than the truth itself. Within a week, half the folks around Desha County had heard some version of the same strange story. The Hensley boy is selling heat blocks made of trash. The details changed, depending on who told it. Some said Willard had invented a magic brick. Others said he was desperate and playing with fire, literally. But for once, the whispers didn't carry pity. They carried curiosity. On Tuesday morning, 2 men showed up at the farm, both wearing old jackets and the stiff expressions of people who were trying not to look too hopeful. They stood near the porch while Willard approached them, wiping his hands on a rag. "You the one making those heat things?" the older man asked. "Something like that," Willard answered. "You got any for sale?" "Not today, but I can make more." "How many?" Willard hesitated. "How many you need?" The younger man scratched behind his ear. 10 each, maybe more later. 20 blocks. Willard felt his stomach twist. He'd barely managed 12 before. His hands were still sore. His back ached every night. But the men stood there waiting, their eyes saying what their words didn't. "We could use a little warmth too." He nodded. "Come back Monday." "We will," the older man said, shaking Willard's hand like he was sealing a contract with fate itself. When they drove off, Mary appeared beside him on the porch. 20 blocks, she whispered. "That's a lot." "It is. You think you can do it?" He looked toward the barn, feeling the weight settle across his shoulders. "I don't have a choice." And he didn't. By Wednesday afternoon, more orders trickled in. 2 from neighbors, 3 from cousins of cousins who had never visited before, 1 from a man Willard didn't recognize at all. Some wanted 5 blocks, some wanted 10. Some wanted however many you got. That was the moment Willard realized the truth he'd been avoiding. This wasn't a side job anymore. This was turning into something real, something that needed space, time, strength, a kind of strength he wasn't sure he still had. His hands were blistered by the second day. Raw red circles formed at the base of each finger where the vice handle rubbed his skin without mercy. Mary tried to dab ointment on them, but by morning the wounds reopened with every twist of the vice. "You need help," she whispered one night, watching him wash straw dust from his arms. "I can manage." "No, Willard, not like this." She held his hands, turning them over gently. "You're hurting yourself. I'll stop when the orders stop." "They won't," she said softly. "That's the whole point." He didn't respond, but at dawn the next morning, he understood she was right. His body had limits, and he was slamming into them. By midday, he was overheating the small stove just to warm the chill that crept into his bones from hours of standing in the barn. His breath fogged the air. Each block took longer. Each twist of the vise felt heavier than the last. His vision blurred more often than he wanted to admit. At sunset, while pressing the 15th block of the day, the vise slipped. The handle snapped back and struck him across the knuckles. Pain shot up his arm. He dropped to one knee, jaw clenched, breath sharp and unsteady. He didn't scream. Men like Willard rarely did, but he stayed there, hunched over the cold barn floor, staring at his shaking hand. Mary found him minutes later. She knelt beside him, her eyes wide and terrified. "Willard, what happened?" "It slipped," he muttered. "This isn't worth losing your hands." "It is," he said firmly, surprising even himself. "If I stop now, it all dies." "It doesn't die," she insisted, cupping his injured hand. "It waits. You don't have to do this all at once." "Yes," he whispered, feeling tears sting behind his eyes. Tears he would never let fall. "Yes, I do." She rested her forehead against his shoulder. "You're going to break yourself." He closed his eyes. "Then let me break, but let me break forward." The words hung there, heavier than the blocks on the bench. That night, Mary helped him wrap his swollen knuckles. She didn't try to stop him again, but she didn't leave his side after that. She stayed in the barn, sorting straw, trimming edges, pressing down bundles before he placed them in the vise. "We're doing this together now," she said quietly. He didn't argue, because her hands, gentle and steady, kept him from collapsing, and her presence filled the barn with something that made the pain easier to carry. By Saturday, they had 20 finished blocks lined on the bench. Some were smoother, some were rougher, but all were solid. When the two men returned Monday morning, they inspected the blocks, nodded in satisfaction, and handed over the money without hesitation. "Tell anyone who needs more," Willard said. "Oh, we already did," the older man replied. As their truck drove off, leaving the smell of dust and diesel in the air, Willard leaned against the barn door, overwhelmed. Mary stood beside him. "You're shaking," she whispered. "I'm tired," he said simply. "You're more than tired. You're right at the edge." He nodded. "Yeah, I know." She took his hand gently. "Then we need help. Real help." "From who?" he asked. "From everyone." He looked at her, puzzled, and Mary said the words he hadn't expected. "It's time to bring the neighbors in. They need the work. We need the hands. And this, whatever this is, it's bigger than just us now." Willard stared out across the frost-covered fields, his breath rising in faint white clouds. This was the breaking point, but maybe, just maybe, it was breaking open, not breaking down. Winter settled over Desha County like a heavy blanket. The air bit harder, the nights stretched longer, and the cold slipped into every crack of every house, barn, and shed across the countryside. But in the Hensley barn, the cold met something it hadn't counted on, a work rhythm that refused to die. After Mary's suggestion, Willard swallowed the pride that had kept him isolated for so long and walked to a neighbor's house, then another and another. Some doors opened slowly, some with surprise, but all with recognition. These were people who had eaten at the same tables, prayed in the same churches, buried fathers in the same hard Arkansas soil. "I need help," Willard said simply, "and I can pay. Maybe not much, but something." The first man he asked, old Mr. Givens, looked at the straw block in his hand, rubbed it thoughtfully, and nodded. "My grandson's been looking for work. He'll come by in the morning." The second neighbor, a woman named Alma, who'd raised 5 children on her own, said, "I'll send my boys. They need honest work." By the end of the week, 6 neighbors were showing up daily to help. Some sorted straw into piles, some cut pieces to length, some packed the straw tightly into small molds they had built from scrap wood. Willard taught each of them the exact pressure the vise needed, how to tell when the fibers were binding correctly, and how to shape the edges so the blocks didn't crumble. The barn, once lonely and hollow, now buzzed with life, voices, laughter, work, purpose. Mary kept a pot of weak coffee warm on a small stove, handing cups to anyone whose fingers started turning stiff from the cold. Straw dust floated in the warm light like golden flecks of hope. For the first time in years, the Hensley farm felt like part of something larger, a community lifting itself with bare hands and stubborn hearts. Demand grew faster than Willard expected. Word spread from the tool shed to the chicken coops, from barns to truck beds, from one neighbor's porch to another's. By mid-December, people were showing up almost daily with orders scribbled on napkins, torn envelopes, and scraps of paper. 6 blocks, need 'em by Friday. 12 for the goat barn. 10 for my smokehouse. Cold's ruining the meat. Some folks brought eggs, or flour, or canned peaches in exchange when money was tight. Willard accepted every trade. Value was value, and warmth was warmth. But the moment Willard realized this was becoming something truly bigger came on a Wednesday morning when a man in a clean coat stepped out of a truck that didn't belong to anyone around there. He looked like he came from somewhere north, Little Rock, maybe, or even Memphis. "You Willard Hensley?" the man asked. Willard wiped his hands. "That's me. Name's Carter. I run a small supply store up near Pine Bluff. Heard about your heat blocks." Willard's stomach fluttered. "Heard what exactly?" "That they work." Carter stepped into the barn, picking one up. inspecting it, that they hold warmth longer than cloth, that they don't rot easy, that they're cheap, which means folks like me can sell a lot of them. Willard felt Mary's presence behind him. He didn't turn, but he felt her hand settle gently at the middle of his back. Carter continued, I want to test a batch. 200 units, delivered in 2 weeks. Mary inhaled sharply. Willard's pulse pounded. 200. He wasn't sure if he felt excitement or fear. Probably both. We can do it, Mary said before Willard could speak. Carter nodded. Good. I'll come back in 2 weeks. If they work as well as I hear, we'll talk long-term contracts. Could be good for you folks. When Carter drove away, Willard leaned against the barn door, dizzy. 200 blocks. In 2 weeks. It felt impossible. But the neighbors didn't think so. When he told them, they grinned like men hearing the first good news after a long drought. 200? That's work for all of us, Alma's eldest boy said. Tell him to come back in 10 days. Old Mr. Givens slapped Willard on the back. Looks like you're building a little factory here. It wasn't a factory. It was nowhere close. But it was something alive. Something big enough to make Willard's throat tighten as he looked at the faces of the people who now depended on his strange idea. They set to work like a small army. Willard reorganized the barn, turning the clutter into stations. One for sorting, one for cutting, one for pressing, one for smoothing. 2 vices weren't enough anymore, so neighbors brought their own. Before long, 5 vices lined the bench. Every night the barn glowed with lantern light, the warm yellow filling the cracks and spilling out into the cold, making the farm look almost magical. Straw dust covered everyone from head to toe, giving them a golden sheen that made them look like workers in some forgotten trade from another century. But it wasn't magic. It was sweat. It was pain. It was relentless effort made by people who had so little that they understood the value of helping each other survive. By the 10th day, 198 blocks sat stacked neatly against the barn wall. On the 12th morning, the full 200 were ready. When Carter returned, he loaded the blocks into the back of his truck, testing a few randomly. He nodded with real respect. These are good. Surprising, honestly. Willard's heart thudded. Thank you. You'll be hearing from me, Carter said. Soon, as he drove away, the barn erupted in cheers. Real, raw, joyful cheers that shook the dust from the rafters. Willard felt something break open in his chest. Mary threw her arms around his neck, laughing into his shoulder. You did it, she whispered. No, he said, his voice trembling. We did. The farm wasn't saved yet. The debts still waited. The land was still tired. But in the cold Arkansas winter, something was rising from the straw, and it wasn't luck. It was work. It was community. It was the stubborn belief that even what the world discards can build a future. The rise had begun. 2 weeks passed, then 3, then a full month slipped quietly into the calendar. Winter tightened its grip across Desha County, and every home, barn, shed, and chicken coop felt the cold digging deeper into its bones. But on the Hensley farm, the cold no longer felt like an enemy. The barn glowed almost every night now. The vice handles turned so often that the wood had polished itself smooth. Straw dust drifted through the lantern light like floating gold, and the neighbors, those same people who once whispered about the Hensley luck, now walked in and out of the place like partners in a shared destiny. Work was steady. Orders came from Pine Bluff, then from Stuttgart, then from a farmer out in Monroe County who wanted to test the blocks in his storage barns. One request came from a woman running a roadside vegetable stand, another from a mechanic tired of his tools freezing overnight. Every order brought the same quiet miracle: money. And every dollar earned felt different from the dollars Willard used to make selling thin crops or odd jobs. This money wasn't bought with luck. It was built, pressed into shape, exactly the way the straw blocks were. One evening, as the barn hummed with the usual rhythm of work, Carter's truck rolled down the drive again. This time he stepped out holding a paper folder. I've been doing tests, he said, handing the folder to Willard. Your product holds up, better than expected. Willard glanced through the pages. Thermal readings, durability notes, even sketches of new packaging ideas. Carter continued. So here's what I'm offering. I want a steady supply. Regular shipments, 300 blocks a month to start. If you can keep up with that, we'll talk bigger. 300. It hit Willard like a gust of warm air in the middle of winter. He knew what 300 meant. It meant stability. It meant guaranteed work. It meant the end of desperation. It meant the beginning of something real, something that could tear the Hensley family free from the grip of poverty that had held them for generations. He straightened slowly, feeling Mary's hand slide into his. We can do it, he said. Carter smiled. Good, then let's get started. The contract was simple, fair, more than fair. When Carter left, Mary took the paper, held it against her chest, and exhaled a long, trembling breath. Willard, you did it, she whispered. He shook his head. We did. She leaned her forehead to his. her voice barely a thread. "No, you started it." The next morning, Willard gathered everyone, neighbors, friends, boys too young to be men, and men too old to still be working. 12 people stood in a loose circle of straw-covered boots and tired eyes. "Well," Willard said, clearing his throat, "looks like we're in business." A ripple of laughs, claps, small whoops of joy filled the barn. Old Mr. Givens wiped his nose with the back of his gloved hand. Alma's boys grinned like men who had finally caught a break. Even the youngest helpers stood a little taller. And from that day on, the Hensley barn became something Desha County had never seen. A small industry born out of scraps. Production grew. Stations multiplied. They repurposed an old shed for additional storage. A cousin brought in a heavy press that could handle bigger loads. The blocks became more uniform, more polished, more sturdy. The work was still hard. Sweat still dripped on cold nights. Fingers still blistered. Backs still ached. But for the first time in years, pain felt like progress, not punishment. By early spring, the farm's bank account, once a grave, had life again. The debts began to fall away, one by one, like chains being cut. One night, after the last order of the week had been loaded onto Carter's truck, Willard wandered out behind the barn. The sky was clear, stars scattered across the darkness like seeds waiting for good soil. Mary joined him, slipping her hand into his. "You remember," she said softly, "when you thought straw was useless?" He nodded. "I remember. And when the fire burned slow that day?" "Yeah. And you picked up that first ugly little bundle?" He nodded again, a tight smile on his face. "It feels like a lifetime ago." Mary rested her head on his shoulder. "It was the moment everything changed. The moment you said, 'What if?'" He looked back at the barn, the place that had once felt like a coffin, but now breathed like a living thing. "Funny," he said. "The world throws something away, and all it takes is one fool too stubborn to do the same." Mary squeezed his hand. "Not a fool, a man who refused to stop trying." The wind rustled through the field, carrying the scent of soil thawing for spring. Silence settled between them, comfortable, warm, full. A few weeks later, Carter arrived with news bigger than any contract. "A distributor in Little Rock heard about your blocks," he said. "Wants to carry them." Could mean statewide demand. Willard's mouth fell open. Statewide. He almost sat down right there on the barn floor. Things moved fast after that. Faster than Willard could ever have imagined. The blocks, once a desperate experiment, were now sold across Arkansas, then across the region. Farmers bought them. Mechanics bought them. Hunters bought them. Anyone fighting cold and working with their hands understood their value. The Hensley farm changed. Not suddenly, not magically, but steadily. The roof was repaired. The debts were cleared. The fields grew healthier. The house felt lighter. The kitchen table grew fuller. And the neighbors, those who worked beside Willard from the start, prospered too. Then came the day, nearly a year after the first sale, when Willard walked into the bank with a check so large the teller had to count it twice. Over $1 million earned across orders, contracts, distributions, and partnerships. Mary cried the moment she heard the number. Willard didn't cry, but his hands trembled. The same hands that had once shaken because he couldn't pay a bill, now shook because he had rewritten the history of his family. That night, he stood alone in the barn, touching the old vice, the same one that had bruised him, cut him, and saved him. He whispered, "Thank you," to no one and everyone. When Mary found him there, he turned to her, eyes shining with quiet emotion. "Look at this place," he said. "Look at what we built." She smiled. "From straw, Willard." "No," he said softly, pulling her close. "From persistence." Behind them, neighbors laughed. Kids ran between bales of straw. Fresh blocks cooled on the shelves. The barn smelled of dust, wood, warmth, and life. The Hensley family had not become rich overnight. They had earned every penny with blood, hope, and hands that refused to quit. And in the years that followed, people would ask Willard the same question over and over. "How did you do it?" He always answered the same way, with a small smile and eyes that remembered every cold night in that old barn. "I didn't make millions from straw. I made millions from never throwing anything away, not even the chance to try." And the legacy lived on, in the barn, in the family, and in every warm corner built by blocks the world once called worthless.